And so I'm thinking about where do I want to go and what do I want the player to think when they're doing what I'm doing, what I'm playing. I'm thinking about both things at the same time.
John Romero helped shape the entire FPS genre with Doom and Quake, and his work has influenced game developers for decades. I got to speak with him about his career, his design approach, and advice for developers today. Here's the full conversation. So you're completely self-taught. I read Masters of Doom and Doom Guy,
Cool.
and now we have Unity, we have Unreal, we have tutorials, we have communities, we have AI. But with that in mind, what should someone who's like starting, getting into game dev, what are the like top three things they should actually do? Whether that's a young person, a kid who's has all the time in the world, or an adult like me and you who have full-time jobs, kids, families, and not as much time. So what would you suggest are the top three things they should actually do? Like what matters early on?
Well, I guess figuring out what you want to do in game dev because there's a lot of jobs. They're not all programming. Um, Getting into game dev, at this point, it really helps if you are a specialist or if you are technical in whatever area you decide to work in, like whether you're like a 3D modeler, you want to be a technical 3D modeler. Um, if you're doing materials, a materials artist or environmental artist, you want to be a technical version of those. Um, Even though it's an art position, you want to be a technical artist, because that just you're ahead of everybody in that discipline if you get to that, if you can get to that point. But figure out what you want to do and start figuring and basically start learning how to do that job, um, for games. And the best way to do it, obviously, is to build a small game. And if you're not a coder, uh, find a little team, like at least one other person. You can do it with one other person. Um, but but get somebody who can develop, that can code. You don't necessarily have to code. If you use Unreal, you use blueprints. You can do it without programming. Um, but come up with something really small that that will you come up with an idea, and that idea it will naturally have a lot to do with your interest in the game dev. If you're a writer, you're going to be writing up a big old story. So that's completely different than if you're a programmer.
Right.
If you're a programmer, if you don't have game ideas, and you want to just get good at coding, pick a game that has been made in the past and try and remake that game to all the details, and try to just finish the game, not half finish it or like, oh, the fun part is the beginning. That's where you get the core of the game working, and then you start doing the rest and kind of give up because it's like, well, that was enough. I
Yeah.
made Pac-Man, it's like
Yeah.
finish Pac-Man, get all the levels in there, get all the fruit in there, get the game over, get the intermissions and the high scores and the attract mode and do all that. And now you'll know what it's like to actually ship a game and not just do part of a game. Um, People who start at the beginning of a game project are pretty lucky, if they go to another company, because a lot of times you're in there in the middle or at the end or something. To be there at the very beginning is really, really great. And if you're making games, you'll be there at the very beginning. So you'll know what it's like to start stuff and what the idea phase is like and all that. But it's important to just come up with something small and figure out how to make that small thing. Like, who do you need to help you finish it if you're not a programmer? If you are a programmer, you can pretty much do everything. Uh, so you can get all the art off the marketplace, you
Yeah.
can get all the audio, you can do everything. But if you want really great game design, you want to learn how to do game design if you're a programmer, or find a game designer, that gets it.
Yeah. So so you so is the are generalists not really as
They're great for indie.
yeah.
Generalists are what indie teams need. When you move into big teams, they need specialists.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, the projects I work on, not game dev, are pretty large teams and big projects, and yeah, it's there's the specialists and there's the generalists, and the specialists are they move up higher or they get the more fun tasks, stuff like that. So that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. In game dev, if you're like a pretty advanced graphics program, you can make 500,000. It's hard to find those people,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah,
And so they're like
yeah,
AI programmers at Meta now.
yeah, 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 yeah. So that's interesting. So to segue into the next one, when you kind of tackled this a little bit with being a specialist and like if you're good at story or you're good at programming, but in the indie dev world, in the indie dev sphere specifically, I feel personally that fun is kind of being lost a little bit when it comes, and a lot of people, at least when starting out, a lot of indie devs want to make their big grand world open games with detailed story and super nice graphics and lore and everything. And I think fun gets kind of pushed to the side sometimes. I know when I was younger, I skipped cutscenes and everything, and I just wanted to, blow off the enemies' heads and stuff, not whatnot. So, do you think that fun might be lost when indie devs are trying to get into the, game devs sector, making their own projects, not into like a real company, but building their own? And would you recommend like not focusing on, say, story for like the first 10 or 20 games while they're building out their projects?
First, don't make a big game. That's a huge mistake.
Yeah.
Do not make an
Yeah.
RPG. Don't
Yeah.
make something that has streaming levels and open world anything. Like that's ridiculous. Uh, there's people that you can see if you do some Google, some you Googling on or whatever, searching on YouTube, you'll find people who have said that they're going to do that. And then they chronicle their efforts and then it just fails. There's no way. So don't do it. You need a whole team to make that game the right way. If you make an RPG, uh, like a small RPG, you have to be really senior. Get it done in a reasonable amount of time. Otherwise, you will never finish that game. So don't even think about it. Keep it in the back of your head because the more experience that you have, the better you will see how your initial idea needs to change to fit what a real game takes, like what it takes to make a real game. There are compromises all the time when you're making a game. There's like, hey, I want to be able to do this. The programmer's like, hey, can't do that because blah, 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 blah. And you're like, oh, what if we did it this way? Yeah, we can do it like that. Okay, good. Compromise. Um, but yeah, you need to like stories. There's nothing wrong with story. It's like you can make a game. As an example, I have a game I made in 10 hours and it has a super messed up story, like disturbing story. It was done while making the game. Like the story was put in there. It's not a great story, but it's a story that is effective, for what it is. It was a 10-hour game and it's up on the App Store. It's all over the place. It was called July 4th, 1976, and it was made in 10 hours with just me and a friend. Um, and that story just happened while making, like, there was an initial idea of what we're trying to do because it was a game jam. And so the goal is this: what if we did it this way? And it's like, all right, let's make it happen. And then as we're like making the game, it's like, oh, all these things could happen. Like when you click on these items, we could give you more of the story. And all these, no matter what you click on, it just keeps adding to the lore that's building about this whole location and what has been going on there. And so you're trying to find the little shreds of stories. You're clicking on everything because that's basically what the game gives you is just text to give you a story, and then sometimes you'll find a key or whatever. But like it is a story game, but it's very creepy. The music is eerie. It's all like the sound effects. It's like it's all bad. So you can do that, like you would think playing that game that it is completely about the story when most of the work was all in just making it happen, in just programming it, getting the graphics together, making the scenes go from one to the other. All that work, like that's what all the time was. It was not in crafting the best story. The story happened while making the game. Like, and it just came out that way because I've been making the games for a really long time. Um, but like make focus on like if you're a writer and you want to make a game and you want to write, come up with something that is totally doable that you are talking to a programmer about how long do you want to spend on this? It's like, oh, I just want to do it in a month. Okay, what do you want to do? I want to do blah 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 blah. And then they'll scope you back. They'll tell you what
Yeah.
can be done, and then you figure out how does your vision fit in that time frame, and does your story change to fit that time frame, or is it just a piece of a bigger story? Are you going to do the first chapter of it or something? You figure out like how do you make your vision happen with a teammate and make that first piece. There's nothing wrong with not having the second piece. Where's PT? Like that, it wasn't done, right? There's a demo. You're making a demo. So just start it. Just make it, scope it down, finish a little piece. You might have some really good ideas because players will give you feedback. And it's like, I never thought about that. That's a really cool idea. And you would have made something different, and it's always good to get people's feedback because that's what they want. A lot of times they're telling you what they want, and so you figure out, okay, people like this angle, so let me just play into that. And now they're really into it, versus at the very beginning, you have no idea that anyone gives, anything about your idea. You're like, okay. But as soon as you get some people interested and they give you feedback, now you're starting to have an audience, and then you can start, you have a vision, but there's also the vision that the audience might be looking for. They take small games, small, 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 uh, and complete them.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's important. It sounds like you're that in that game that you kind of turned story into a mechanic. Since
Yeah,
you
yeah.
since you know since you had to
You're
open things in a
hunting,
yeah, so
you're
it wasn't
hunting.
just like follow along or linear. It was you turned it into something that the player could actually do or interact
Yeah.
with, which gave it a little bit more fun and juice to it. So that was
Well,
a
that's the other thing is the word fun. Not every game has to be fun.
yeah,
Like when you're
it's
watching a movie.
subjective. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Not all movies are fun. Schindler's List, not a fun movie, right?
yeah,
But some games are meant not to be fun as well. This war of mine is not going to be a fun game to play, and so that's what indies are really going for a lot of times is an emotion. They're trying to get across a story or something like that, which is excellent. That's true art, That's what movies and books are all trying to convey is this feeling. And getting that across is really important. But what you need to nail is your core loop. Is the most important part of your game. What are you doing every second? What is the cursor doing? Or you're moving with a controller. What you're doing, that's the first thing you start building in the game. You don't do the title screen, you don't do anything. You make that core loop work. Because if that doesn't work and nothing else matters, who cares? If that part is not feeling good or getting you the giving the feeling that you want the player to have, like as an example, when you're playing a VR game and you have to move, which is like a disconnect in VR games, it doesn't feel good that your feet aren't moving, but you're like moving forward as you're standing there or whatever. Um, in VR games, you can't really run or people get sick. And so you're moving slowly. And if there's something coming after you, and you're just crawling basically. It feels
yeah,
really bad.
yeah,
That might be an impending dread the designer wants the player to feel is it is after you, impending dread. It is coming for you in one way or another. Final destination, whatever. So people, so you could work on how that's going to be done. How are we going to get that feeling across? And you just start prototyping that. That is your core loop. That's the thing that matters. The moving around a space is is easy. Like that's kind of just built into every engine. You don't even need to really worry about that part. You have to worry about the part where like the actual thing is happening in your game. Whether it's final destination moment, it's the jump scare, it's how do you make something appear on the screen subtly? How do you misdirect the player? and then do something out of sight that they see later or in a mirror or whatever. There's all these things, but like those are the juicy parts, and you want to make sure that you can do that right, you know. So you got to focus on those parts because that's what your game is about, is those moments.
Yeah, I think yeah, that's a good perspective for me because I always call it fun, and but you narrowed it down where fun
Yeah.
isn't always the right word.
Yeah,
That
what's the experience?
yeah, it's the feel. It's getting the player to
The
maybe
emotions too, yeah.
enjoyment's a little better, closer to what it is. But yeah, it's that feel because I try to tell the people my group or recommend the same thing that get that core loop down, even if it's a singular action, just and get that
Yeah,
first feeling because you can have the best story in the world, but if the player doesn't last 5 minutes into the game, no one's gonna find out your story.
exactly.
You know, but
Yeah,
so
that's a lot of like our early like when we made Doom, before that, there were three lives in games. And you die three times and you start the whole game over. And it's like when you're trying to sell the rest of your game, if they can't ever get to the end of it, they'll never pay you money.
yeah,
So you
yeah,
need to make sure that they finish the game, you know? Like the one of the most important pieces of advice for monetization is remove all walls to paying money. Don't don't for the sake of pure game design limit people from doing that. You know, if it's if they can get to the end of a piece of your game, even, like not too fast, but at a certain point where it's like, okay, you gave them enough content and they really like the story, they like the way it feels, they like whatever, get them to the point where they can buy more, because when people love something, they want to pay for it. And, you just got to give them enough of it that they know that they're hooked and they want more of it. And then if you're doing the episodic or, DLC or whatever, you can do it that way and people will gladly do it. You don't want to like make people pay because they have to.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I get that. Yeah. So that kind of works me into my next one is when you're designing a game or level, do you design it for you, like as the avatar, like something you'd want to play, or for what you think others will want to play, or a combination of it?
It's kind of both. So, as an example, if I'm making a Doom level, like I'm making a Sigil 2 level or something, I'm thinking of, okay, what looks cool? As soon as you start the level, how cool does it look? What am I seeing and what is happening? Am I being attacked already? Or am I in a position where if I even move, it's going to start? Or am I in a room alone that's ready to start popping traps or whatever? So so that's based off of everything that I know the players should be doing at the start of other levels, so there's no repetition. Otherwise, your game becomes boring because they can predict what's going to happen. So you basically, I sit there going, okay, I want it to look really cool when they start, and it gives them lots of ideas about what to do, where to go, that kind of thing. And and then I start building it. And as I'm building it, like I already know what's going to happen. Like I know everything. I actually don't know the whole level. I know that, like, let's say the first level of Sigil 2, when you start, you're being shot at, and there's a bunch of enemies in front of you facing the guys that are shooting. Those guys will hit them, and they'll start a little fight. And so what you can do is just kind of move behind another enemy to have them get shot, and so you can kind of direct that. Or you can just like, I'm gonna start fighting too from behind and kill the guy to get the shotgun. I want the shotgun more than anything else because I don't have one. And then and then you find out you're in an enclosed space and you can't get out. How do I get out? Oh, I got to find the Baphomet's eye, the sigil, and then shoot that. And then that opens up the next piece. And it's like, oh, more shit, right? And when you open up the next piece, you can see, oh, there's the exit that you will not get to until you go through so much stuff you can see it. And you can go think about how you're going to get there. It's not going to happen, but you can go like, okay, now I know what the exit looks like when I see it. And you can see what's waiting for you. And so you go from there, figure out how to get to the next place. There's like little areas that you can go pick stuff up. There's a guy with some ammo and another shotgun, and it's like that little side thing is like, well, if I didn't kill one of these guys, I'm still gonna need a shotgun. I'm gonna have to let the player come over here and get one over here. So it's not just my style, which would be like kill that guy, get his gun, and take off. It's like, well, someone might not do that, or if they're in easy mode, there won't be a shotgun, right? So a shotgunner. I got to make sure all skill levels are going to be covered with this. So I need to place another one, an actual shotgun somewhere around the corner that has a path to it, and it's all good. Um, and then they got to figure out how to open up the next space. So they figure it out. It's another eye. It's like teaching them how to do that. And then when they do that, they go into another hallway. There's more monsters. Doors open. Spawns a cyber demon. So they can't really go backwards now because now there's a cyber demon, and but it loops back around to where they are going to see the cyber demon. They got to figure out how to get to back to the very beginning again, which isn't that. It's just a little loop, but it's like there's a lot that happens in that loop. And so I'm thinking about where do I want to go and what do I want the player to think when they're doing what I'm doing, what I'm playing. I'm thinking about both things at the same time. I'm like, how much fun is this? Is this fun to do? And what can I get the player to figure out here? Like it's got to have a good flow. They got to like know where they're going to go. But at the same time, it should be challenging to do it and also be like, oh my God, if there's a way to scare them or like there's no way that just happened and then you open up a wall and there's a teleporter and you go into the teleporter, now you're back in the beginning, but now there's a new wall that just opened up with stairs going up to more monsters that you saw before, but well, you saw one of them, but now there's more, and so you got to blow those guys away, and if you run up the stairs you fly over lava and land inside of a cave, and so now you're in the next section you're not getting out of until you figure out how to get out of there. You're locked in a cage and there's a bunch of graves outside the cage, and then a bunch of monsters come out of it. So it's like just one thing after another, and I'm just like, I know what's going to happen, so I'm just designing it, but I'm thinking about the player's experience when they see it for the first time and deal with it.
Yeah.
And so I'm doing both things. It's got to be fun for me to play. It's got to be challenging. I always like design depending on what I'm making. I have a specific difficulty level that I'm designing for, and I tend, at least for my stuff, people tend to like the most difficult stuff. Um, just a second. They like stuff that is just really hard to play. But there's difficulty levels, so go ahead and play easy or whatever. But the real design is in ultra violence, and so I just kind of I go through and just like, oh, this would be cool if they saw this, if they found this secret area, lots of secrets. I have rules. Every level has to have like four minimum secrets, and just like all of these things. There's a little rule thing that I make for every like set of levels that tries to be a little bit different than what I did before. Maybe it adds an extra element or something. Just so people can like, okay, I know how that stuff worked. Oh, this is interesting. This is a new thing. It's always like doing a new thing, not just that there's new levels, but like what is the next thing in here that people will learn and it's cool. And I feel like there's some kind of meta progression between sequels of the game.
So you kind of build it for yourself and then think about what is
What the
giving
players
you give the player
experience.
options so they can kind of take their own route, but still guiding them to the end goal and like little micro options, I guess. And then, like
Yeah.
you said, depending on difficulty, they might have more options or less options, and that gives
There's a lot of
little
there's a
bit
lot
free
of
will. Yeah.
Yeah, because of the amount of enemies and where they appear and what difficulty level you're on and everything. There's a whole lot of variance, but there's a lot of strategy as well for players to figure out like I don't want to kill that guy right now. Like there's a cyber demon. I spawn a cyber demon in the very beginning area of the first level. If you're in ultraviolet mode. And it's like there's not enough ammo on the level to kill it.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
how do you kill it, right? And you don't know that until you get through the level and you're like, there's no way. You get to the very end where you could go through the exit, or there's that cyber demon that's still here. You can't 100% the level because it's there, right? And for people to care about 100%, that's a problem. If they don't care, get through the exit, get out of here because that's nuts. But if they do want 100%, they got to figure out now what is it? How did he expect me to kill this thing? There's not enough ammo, and you figure out how to lure the enemy, flip a switch, crush him from the ceiling and then he dies that way, you get 100%. But I also build in lots of other stuff there, I was being pretty extreme with Sigil too. So when you start the level, every level, you have 30 seconds to find a secret that will close forever on that
Okay.
level.
Forever.
So forever, yeah, you're not opening it up again unless you start the level again. Get started all over again. So if you do start the level over again, you still got 30 seconds to find that thing to get 100% on that level. And if you don't, then you're not getting 100% of kills or secrets or items because I make sure all three of those things are in the same place if you can find it. Um, and uh, and I also have another secret that is what's called a oh, what is it? I can't remember the name of the texture. It's a horrible looking texture. It's red and blue. Um, and it's a texture that's like a joke in the game in the Doom community. And I have a secret. Every level has a secret room of that texture, which has some of the enemies that like if you don't find that room, you're not going to get the 100%. So it's like just like for extreme players only kind of thing.
Yeah.
But
Is it
yeah,
that?
so
Is it that crack? I didn't know that there's. Is that or is that was that? Yeah.
yeah, there are some cracks that will reveal
Okay.
that specific texture, and you
Hmm.
just have to shoot it, and you
Yeah.
shoot it, it
Yeah.
opens up, and you're like, yeah, I can kill the guy, pick up the thing, and get a secret. That's the one that actually counts for 100%. The 30-second one is also for 100% because there's items to pick up and all that kind of stuff. Secret, yeah, you need both. It's very hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
People
It's not.
complain.
Yeah. I don't 100% the levels very often. So yeah. Um. So that kind of brings me on to like a less is more approach, especially for starting out. I like to think about I know I've run into the issue of trying to add feature and feature and feature and feature when I'm learning and just to make it more fun or more enjoyable. And I've realized that you can get really far, especially starting out in game dev, with a singular action like jump, shoot, dodge. So what do you think about this approach if like less is more and if that should be focused on like early on?
Yeah, I mean that's how I was learning all of my game dev was make a little game that does something. Okay, now the next game is going to do that, but I'm going to add one more thing to the game. It's like it's not putting it all in one game, it's putting it into a bunch of little bitty games, which means you're getting better at just the core stuff. There's if you're a programmer, you get better at game architecture, you get better at like how to speed things up. You're getting better at like a lot of things. Like graphics will advance. You'll get better at loading assets. Like you'll arrange your stuff in a different way. You'll get better at just that basic stuff. But then you're also learning new things because you're putting another element into your game that adds more to it, and that's better because you're getting way more experience shipping something, completing stuff. You're getting more experience at like what makes core loops tick. You can play around with progression. You can do all kinds of little things with just a running game. And like when you start the next game, you don't need to like trash the previous game. You can use that as the base and add your new thing. But at least you've finished that thing that you made, that game that you made, and let's say, okay, the next one is the sequel. What's going to be added to the sequel? And so usually it's not like a little bitty thing. If you make a sequel, you're going to add a whole system or something into the game because that's way more exciting to add a whole system. Like if you ever played the game Minute, um, it's a really cool indie game where you will die in 1 minute.
Okay.
And what you learn within that 1 minute just by playing the game, you'll use that information to continue going probably in a completely different direction as soon as you spawn again. And you solve the game after all of these minutes that you're dying and learning information. And it's really cool. It's almost like the game 12 Minutes, which is another indie game where like you have to solve this murder kind of thing in 12 minutes or cops get you. And so you have to hurry up and do it. And it's really, really cool. But it's like that's a cool mechanic to just like, what is this nutty mechanic? Design a game around that. It's enough to just try to do that. It is very non-standard, but that's the way that indies think. You're thinking, how do I make something that people haven't seen before? And that subverts the typical way that games are played, you know? Um, so yeah, so it's always good, it's always great thinking outside the box like that and experimenting with those things. Um, like my daughter, she's out here, she's programming. She's making a game which is it's a game that you're creating a game inside of it. So the game is that you have a desktop, you run your IDE, and now you're like making a game. You're doing the graphics and all sounds and stuff, and she's programming all that stuff. But it's a horror game, and the whole thing turns into a horror situation while you're making the game. And it's like that's a lot of work to
Hmm.
do meta type thing, but it is very guided. You can't just like do whatever you want. You are guided through each of the phases. Um, but it's like, oh, I get an idea of what it's like to do some game dev, and then horror.
Yeah, then the tables are turned quickly,
Yeah,
and
things happen.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, and that's different. That's another way of making stuff, which is, you know, a little bit non-standard. It's like people don't expect that. Like there's a game called T100, I think, which is a game about assembly language programming your way out of the game. The programming
Yeah,
game, and
yeah.
you're programming an assembly to like code your way out of the game.
Yeah, I think you kind of, yeah, I don't remember which book it was. It was either, it might have been Masters of Doom, and it could have been you that said it, I'm not sure, but that you always made the games that you were working on the best it could be at the time. And anything like in the future, or if you want, you waited for the later game, the next game, and that's kind of like, I believe, like when you if you have complex systems, especially starting out, it's better to break that big grand complex system into smaller systems and then turn those individual ones into their own game so you can learn how those work and then build on top of it. I think that's kind of a similar strategy or close to it.
Yeah, yeah, it is funny. One thing I say a lot is when you're like the thing that you spend the most time on in your game will be the best part of your game. So if you're making a game and you're walking around in rooms and you're like clicking on stuff to investigate, but you spend a lot of time programming the trash can. The trash can is a portal to another world or something, right? Like something
Yeah.
happens with stuff in trash cans, and you spend a bunch of time coding up this whole trash can thing. That will be your game. Like that will that'll end up being the coolest part of the game when you
Yeah.
discover the trash. It's kind of like um not that they did this on purpose, but on the NES, there was a game called Super Pitfall 2, and it's kind of like a platformer adventure, like Indiana Jones kind of thingy. And so you're jumping around and you're just collecting stuff and killing monsters and all this. But there's this one tunnel, this one like area that looks like every other area. And when you go down this hallway to the left, if you jump up into the corner and hit your head in the top left corner in this place, you go to another world. And that world
Okay.
is so difficult to get through, but that's the only way to finish the game. But it's like this bizarro, why did you do that? There's no indicator that says that you should jump up the corner. That
Hmm.
was totally an accident. And basically you're in hell right after that happened. It's really bad. But it is nuts to like for players to discover some other weird world. It's a lot of work to do that. But it is but yeah, you could, like we're gonna spend a lot of time on our inventory. We're gonna have a really cool Tetris-like inventory, or an inventory is based on weight. Doesn't matter how big the stuff is, you can only carry this much stuff. Um and focus on just that thing and what it looks like, and are you clicking and dragging, or are you just clicking and move stuff back and forth automatically? You can spend a lot of time on it and figure out, what is it about this inventory system, and then it might like actually give you an idea for something else that affects the core loop. The inventory system is affecting the core loop in a specific way, and then it's like, well, this is what happens when you spend so much time on an inventory system.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
as an example of paying attention to your systems, um, killing stuff in an RPG, like it drops loot. And I played an RPG a long time ago. that I could have four people in my party, and you kill something and the loot pops out, and you pick it up and you look at it and you compare it to what you got, and you're like, okay, which one of these is better? Because they have stats on the items, and it's like, oh, this one might be better, so I'm gonna swap it with that. Now I have four characters in my party. I'm controlling them all. Those four characters have four pets. So there's eight characters moving around, killing. It's like a wall of death, killing everything that you hit. And now it's become an inventory game because it was an action game. It was an action RPG, but then it became an inventory game because now you're comparing everything for every character to the things that just dropped. And basically, that's not fun. That was not like it wasn't fun. It should have been systems to make it easy to like pop a thing up and just say these are the best things for these characters, assign and make it easy because as soon as you go down the hole of like inventory management stuff, you've changed your game, and you have to really focus on like keeping the focus where it belongs. Like in Wolfenstein when we were making Wolfenstein and we had dragging dead bodies and searching for keys and stuff and opening crates and all that. It's like that's not running and gunning. That's stopping and doing something that's not running and gunning. So it's like, okay, this isn't stealth. This is not a stealth game anymore. The original was a stealth game. We are officially not making a stealth game anymore. It's way more fun to just open a door and blast Nazis. That's what we're going to do. So everything has to submit to that focus for the game design, and then we remove everything that's a blocker to that. And that's why the game turned out the way it was. We had stuff that slowed you down. So it's like you got to make sure you're true to your core and change the design if it's veering off the core in a bad way.
Yeah, I get that. So overcomplicating or making things too realistic can be a detriment, can be a downfall to things. At
Unless
that,
you're making a simulation.
yeah. I've been reading. My current book is the Blood, Sweat, and Pixels,
Oh no.
and that in the Uncharted 4 chapter they address that where with the I think they have a grapple they said, and you had to they originally tie up the rope and spin it up and do multiple steps, and they said it just wasn't fun. Like you said, it's not a
Yeah.
grappling game, so they just did a single button push to press to throw the grapple, and they were like, that's all we need. We don't People don't need to spend time twirling up the rope and everything, and it's
Yeah.
not fun.
Unless you're making a technical mountain climbing simulation.
Yeah,
So it
exactly.
has to be appropriate for what you're trying to get across, and you make it easy to use. Make everything easy to use. Nobody wants hard to use stuff.
Yeah,
Like always, yeah, always have to remember humans always want minimum input and work for maximum output. You're using a keyboard and a mouse, and if you watch someone's hands while they're playing a game, the screen's going crazy and they're barely moving their fingers and their
okay,
mouse,
yeah,
right? That's minimum input for this maximum output. VR is the opposite. That's why it doesn't work. It's maximum output, physically maximum output for a minimum amount of what you're going to see on the screen. Even though that presence and everything is really cool, it wears you down and you just can't do it for that long. It's like always it's a minimum input for maximum output. So always think about that when you add a system, that system needs to be minimum work to get the maximum benefit.
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. Yeah, 100%. So in today's world, when you were learning game dev and everything, you had basically no tools at your disposal, right? There weren't readily available engines. You
There's
coded in the
nothing.
most basic languages, but today there's Unity, Unreal, there's asset stores, there's tutorials everywhere you look. There's even AI now, right? You can use AI to help you code and create things. And but I feel like it seems like it should have gotten easier. Like game dev should, the overall process, but it doesn't seem like it has for at least people getting into it. And I don't know if that's because of information overload. There's too much information out there and 1,000 different people saying different things. They get misinformation from watching devlogs. It makes it seem easier than what it is because game dev is a complex machine, complex beast. Or they're focusing on the wrong things, trying to make these overscoped games too early on. So, what do you think about how game dev was when you were starting out and how it is now, and what people are possibly doing wrong, I guess.
I think that I'd say that the process of beginning to learn how to make stuff is pretty similar in difficulty as it was back in the day because back then you needed to learn, let's say you're a programmer, you have to learn every byte of memory in a computer and what it does. And there's a lot of ROM and there's a lot of functions in ROM on 8-bit systems. And you need to know all the technicalities of how everything works, how memory works, how every stop switch works, everything, and how the built-in hardware works. So it's like all of that learning is just like learning how Unreal Engine works. You're spending a lot of time figuring out how does the IDE work? How do you make anything move on the screen? It's like it's easy to start and drag and drop stuff, but like how do you get beyond that? And so learning that is kind of like, okay, I'm learning the computer. Now I have to learn assembly language. And I have to then not just learn that language, I have to learn techniques of making this fast. I've got to make fast stuff because when I just write it normally, it's not fast. I got to figure out how to optimize all that effort that you used to have to put into 8-bit systems. You have to put into learning your IDE and the engine that you're using. And that's I'd say it's the same amount. It's like you don't have to do any low level stuff anymore. You have to understand how it works. And that's a lot of work. And you got to find the right tutorials. I'd say Udemy has some really good ones could just get into like a YouTube forest of who knows what. But Udemy actually has really good stuff. And you have to spend that time. If you are not focused and devoting tons of time, you're not going to learn it. You have to learn it and you have to do it. You have to be writing something with what you're learning. There's the stuff that they'll walk you through, and that's fine. You need to do that, but it's going to give you ideas about how you're going to be able to do that immediately with your own idea, you know. But I'd say it's similar, but it's different. Like you do have to learn the environment that you will live in now versus the previous, 40 years ago where you had to learn the environment again, but like to just make basic stuff work. One of the things that was an issue back in the day, which could be an issue today, is here's my scope. I got a cool idea. Wait a minute. I got to spend most of my time just trying to make stuff work. It takes so much time to figure out how to like get a pixel on the screen back in the day. And now you're trying to figure out, I just need this one thing to work. How do I get it to work in a blueprint? I just need to pick something up and whatever, put it in inventory. And you're having to learn all that stuff and you have to focus on that, and you can Google that up now. It's so great. Back in the day, that was impossible.
Yeah.
Um, there weren't even books on how to make games really. So it was just like, well, here's the programming language, figure it out. Um, so it really comes down to time and focus, and having the right resource. Like I had books. I had a book when I started programming back in 80, like when I had a computer at home in 82. um I had a book that was given to me that was like supposed to be an assembly language book. It ended up being a horrible waste of my life. It was a book that was never going to help me learn how to code. It was a theoretical book about how processors are made. That is garbage. That is not helpful. And I finally, for Christmas, got the books that I needed from my parents because they had just come out. They changed everything. Those two books changed everything. It's kind of like you find the right tutorial that will get you doing stuff that you know that you need to understand that are building blocks for making your game, and that will make everything click. It's like when you're in school, when you have the right teacher, you will have a great success in a subject. If there's the teacher is horrible, you're going to get bad grades, and it's not going to be, you're going to not like that subject when it could have been something that you could have loved because of who taught it. So you want to find the right tutorial and go through that and also hook up with people who totally know this stuff, like network, get out there, find little dev groups full of, like, if you're into Godot, find a bunch of Godot devs and start learning that. I always tell people, dude, Unreal Engine. Like if you're not doing Unreal Engine, you first of all, Unreal makes games. Like Epic makes games. Their engine is made only for their games. Unreal is for Fortnite. Everyone has to understand that. But it's an engine that runs games, right? Unity doesn't make games. They don't make games at all. They have people that know how to make a game engine, but it's not really for games. It's for whatever. And then when you go from there to Godot or any other SDKs, it's like there's less and less people working on maintaining that stuff. But if you're looking at Epic, you're looking at hundreds of people working all the time to make that game better, that game engine better. So it's like everybody's using it. It's the it's the sanest, best way to do game dev because you will be programming in C++, which is the critical language that you need to know if you're a programmer and you're going to go to any other company and work on their engine or work on their teams. C++ is the root of all today's engine, all of today's languages, whether it's Python or Java or anything like that. C++, you know more than those other languages, basically. You pick them up in 5 minutes.
Yeah. So you're an Unreal man. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I've
Yeah.
used so many different SDKs, and
Yeah.
like my preferred language really is like Lua. I really
Okay.
love
Yeah.
Lua.
Hmm.
But
Yeah. I
C++
agree. I use
is
C++
performance.
at work, but I use a Unity at home. I like C sharp, but at work I use C++ every day. And I've used Unreal and I've wanted to go back to it. I just haven't made that transition yet. So I get that. Yeah, that C++ is like the way to go, especially if you want to venture into building your own engine eventually or down that rabbit hole. I mean, like you said, it's what's used in the industry because
Yeah.
it's super powerful, it's super fast for, you
C++,
know,
was made for high performance. That language was designed for speed, and that's why it's used for all console games. So if you are going to program at Ubisoft and use Anvil or Snowdrop or whatever, like those are in C++. Like it doesn't matter what you're doing. And if you're making a game that is a turn-based game, something that doesn't need that crazy speed like an FPS does, then you can use whatever. It doesn't matter. Like when our last game before the current one, we used Unity, and and we also made it a Lua game. So even though it's got C sharp, we also made it the game code itself is in Lua because one of the things when you start learning how to dev, you figure out what is the pain point on your iteration speed. And a lot of times it's that stupid stop and run button in your IDE because you have to load all the resources, you got to init everything and all that. So what we did was we connected Lua into, put Lua in the engine, and then we basically could pull down a console that we coded, reload all the new Lua code that we just rewrote and just run it. There's no stopping Unity. Unity just keeps running. You just keep reloading the context of the program, the Lua code, and just start the game over that way. So you don't have all your assets are already there.
nice.
It
Yeah.
makes your iteration go way faster when you control that environment. And so that was the way that we could get a game done a lot faster, where we don't have to start and stop constantly, and we could just reload stuff. We just did it like Quake, pull down the console, change variables, all that stuff. Just like do it while the game is running, even.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Unity has that issue. It doesn't have it that built into. I know there's assets you can like plugins do that, but yeah, when you get far into the game dev process, iteration time matters a lot. So
Oh yeah,
yeah,
it's everything. And one of the for programmers, one of the most critical parts of of having way less bugs, especially that are big time critical problem bugs, is to only code for a short amount of time before you test. Like, don't code for half an hour. That's going to be a lot of debugging. You know, code a loop, code whatever, loading stuff, run it, test it, breakpoints, look at your variable, make sure that everything is what you're hoping for. Make sure that you have the bounds set so you're not like have exploding, you know, like values that you never should have, all of those clamping and all that kind of stuff. But like you run it over and over and over again, and then you add some more code to it and you keep on running it. And as soon as it breaks, it broke because the last 5 minutes you just added something. which you obviously have in your short-term memory easily because it's only 5 minutes. And the reason why why that works is you don't have like these huge problems that you cause by writing code for half an hour and there's 10 places where there's problems. There's usually like one problem. You hit one problem to solve it and your code is still running. And so that was learned but basically on 8-bit systems that had no debuggers. Like when it crashed, the computer stopped working, and there's no way to tell you where it crashed or what happened. You're just, okay, well, what I just did is what caused a problem. Let me change some code and then run it again. But the problem was.
It reminds me of working with JavaScript. That JavaScript doesn't like telling you what's wrong. So
I know it hides its errors. It's funny because like it's so cell phony because like cell phones have errors constantly right now. Your phone is erroring 100% so many times right now. If you plugged your phone into like Xcode, if you have an Apple code, you run Xcode, plug your phone in and watch the errors.
okay.
Like it's always handling errors all the time. That's what the systems are designed for. And JavaScript is like a very popular
Hmm. Yeah.
language where it's like, hey, don't like crash out all the time. You need to keep on running. And it's like, well, that's not always the best thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Before we transition into, I have a few questions from people in my group. I just wanted to bring up that when I was reading Doom Guy, there was a chapter that stood out to me that really stuck with me. It was a chapter where your house flooded, when you had all your stuff in your that room off your closet, and just reading through it, like I had the dread of like what was the outcome going to be, and it was like I was
Yeah.
like, please be okay. Like it just, I
Well,
felt it. So I can't imagine what you were going through. Just reading it, I was like, oh man, that's like, I
I
hope
hope,
everything's fine in that room.
yeah. So what about it?
Just like, what were you thinking? Well,
Oh yeah.
you
Well, I
know,
was like, that was the first place I went. I'm
yeah,
like, there's a bunch of stuff under here. There's also a lot of stuff in a storage shed outside the house, but I kept the really important stuff inside, but I also kept it inside plastic snap tie top containers. And when I went in there, it was like, all right, cool. There's no cardboard because that would have been the worst thing if it was
right, yeah,
cardboard
yeah,
boxes,
yeah,
soggy. If there were discs in there, like it's really important to just like if you want to keep stuff, put them in Ziploc bags inside of plastic or whatever. Like make sure that it is 100% water can't get to it because you never know. And the other thing is like if your house is on fire, there's always water coming after that.
yeah, yeah. You get
Right?
most of the damage is actually the water damage. I'm putting it
Yeah.
out. Yeah,
Yeah. So make sure that you have, your stuff in Ziploc bags inside plastic with a tight top on it. If you care about it.
yeah, yeah. That was
Don't
just
do cardboard is bad. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. We've recently transitioned most of the boxes in our garage to bins. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was like that hurt. That was a painful moment in the book. I felt for you. So I'll get to a few member questions here. From Shane, Shane wants to ask, your Doom and Quake levels still studied today for the way they guide players, build tension, hide secrets, all of that. When you were building those maps, what was going through your mind? How did you know where to put sightline, secret windows? How did you give it the Romero touch?
Everything about my level design is that I am building those levels as I'm making them, and I play it hundreds and hundreds of times. So I run it, I get to the latest point where I'm at, like building it, and it's like, does this feel good getting to this point? Am I having a good time? Like, why is it too easy? Or like, why is it not challenging? And what should happen here? Because your level is changing so much as you build it. Because you could just go at some point, I'm going to make another hallway over here. And that's like, oh shit, another decision point for the player. It's like, what's going to happen over there? Um, so it's all about me building something for the player to figure out and is challenging for whatever difficulty they're at. Um, Giving hints if at all possible, because that's always fun for a player to discover hints. They feel smart. Um, and and then like making the thing happen, whether monsters are coming out or like a one-way wall and stuff comes from a one-way wall, and it's like, what is going on? Like some sort of interesting thing that you're not just replicating over and over in a level. You in a game, you don't want the levels to feel monotonous. So it's always a lot of like, how do I make this interesting and it doesn't feel like anything in the game right now? How does this become unique? If you remember, like in Quake, we had American in episode 3. He had the wind tunnels level. We're getting blown through wind tunnels, not using that anywhere else. That's his stuff. It's like it would be too easy. It's like, well, shit, we'll just wind tunnel our way through the whole game.
Yeah.
Forget it. That's like garbage. You have to make the game a roller coaster for people to want to keep on going through it. The way Half-Life 2 is like masterfully designed as a roller coaster. And so you want that differentiation there. So I'm always thinking about how can I do what's the next thing to do and what's different about what I'm doing. And you have to know the rest of the whole game so you're not duping something someone else did. And if you think you might be, ask them, hey, did you do this with this thing? And like, yeah. And like, okay, I'm gonna do. How did you do it? And it's like, okay, yeah, that's what I was gonna do. Never mind. I got to come up with something else. And so you're always thinking of new stuff. You're always thinking about like what's gonna be funny, what's gonna be dangerous, what's gonna be a risk, with a big reward. Like all of those things anywhere in the level. You're always thinking about like what's the point and how do I get them out of here? Don't want them to backtrack through the whole thing. That's a whole different way of things. That's a lot more work than just flowing through it. But it's like it's kind of cool if you can do that. Like, how do I get someone to backtrack through a place and they understand that they need to do that? Because that's not a normal thing today. So you have to figure out how do I flow people back? How do I indicate to them that they're meant to do that? And so there's so many things, but I'm always thinking about what is the experience and how can I make it better right now? And does that fit the feel of what I'm trying to do on this one specific level? Is it true to the feel of that spell, that space?
Yeah, makes sense. Good answer. So I got another one from Greg. Looking back on your whole career, what's the hardest earned piece of wisdom you've taken with you? The thing that costs the most to learn?
You need to know your co-founders extremely well before you found a company with them.
That makes
Number
sense.
one, number one,
Yeah.
you need to
Yeah.
work with people that you will found a company with.
Yeah. Pick the right people. Yeah.
Yeah, pick the right people, and the only way to know is to actually get in the trenches with them to see who they are.
Yeah. That's that's gold right there.
Yeah.
And one more from Tito. Tito wants to know, what is your favorite game to play that you didn't make?
I always go back to Ghost Recon Breakpoint, which in 2019 was the worst game of the year. That's what like Washington Post or something rated it that because they turned Ghost Recon, this tactical shooter, into a looter shooter, and that just made everyone go crazy. They fixed all of that over the next couple of years. They added an immersive mode. They made it like the hardest tactical shooter. If you want to play something extremely difficult, you can turn it to elite settings, immersive mode, no HUD, and you feel like it's real life. And if you don't hear something coming, you're dead. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
super extreme, but it's so much fun to play at that level. And I love sniper rifles, and that game is all about all kinds of tons of weapons, but like lots of really great sniper rifles. Um, Lots of very dangerous enemies, gigantic drones, just idiots that are funny to listen to. The dialogue is hilarious. You fly your drone over a bunch of stupid soldiers and listen to them say stuff to each other that's hilarious that you probably won't be hearing normally in the game because you're just blowing everyone away. But like if you listen to them talk, it is so funny. It's just such a great game. It's a whole world, open world, streaming everything. Every biome is there. It's just I just love it. And I finished that game. I've 101% completed it actually.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. So
Wow.
it's fully complete, and I've done this for years. That's way over 1,000 hours. Um, because it's just a place to go in and just like kill stuff. And when you go to kill stuff, you really don't know when you go to a level what's going to be in the level. You have an idea, but it's always randomized. So the whole world is random. If you're playing that game at night and you get in a helicopter and you just fly up really high and you just see all the spots of all the lights of cities and there's like 100 of them in front of you, game is huge.
I'll
It's
have to check it out. I haven't tried that one. Yeah,
so good. Yeah, I just love that game. Favorite game right now. Yeah.
that's a good one. So before I let you go, is there a place you would like people to follow you or tell them about something that you're working on or, something you want to plug?
Yeah, yeah, on Instagram, the Romero, and on X is just Romero.
Okay.
There's also Romero Games Ltd Limited on Instagram. Um, the Romero Games, I think it is. The Romero Games.
Okay.
That's where most of the stuff is posted. Like
Okay.
what we're doing, what games we're making, like where we're going to be. We're about to go to Madrid for a big conference.
Nice.
This came from Lucca in Italy, and before that we were in Malaga. Um, so we're all over the place.
You ever make it back over to the States?
It's really rare. It's really rare if I go back to the state. I mean, I'll be there next summer.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, a little bit away.
yeah,
Yeah.
probably go to QuakeCon or something.
Nice. Nice. But John, seriously, this was awesome. Great opportunity. I was super excited for it. I know my community is super excited, and I really appreciate you and everything you've created along your career. But I hope you have the great rest of your day.
Cool. Thanks a lot for reading the books
Yeah.
and following the career and playing all the games and for making games.
Yeah. Yep.
The
Trying
world of
to
games.
follow in your footsteps.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Have a
Cool.
good day.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.